episode of Video Game Logic. Today's show is recorded on February the 19th, 2019. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist, and with me, as always, helping me build an arc,
Caffeine Rage.
On today's show, we will of course be discussing the games that we've played. Activision Blizzard lays off 8% of its employees. Bethesda breaks their promise that Fallout 76 microtransactions would be cosmetic only. Civilization 6 Steam end-user license agreement changes to allow for data collection. We'll have a quick reminder in Community Corner about Game Night. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello, Rage. I'm all better. Ish.
Well, for your standards, which for most people that wouldn't be much, but still.
Yeah. I had strep throat last week, everyone. My kid had it, and brought it home and gave it to me. Thankfully, Katie seems to have missed it, and at this point, it's unlikely that she will catch it from either of us, because both me and my kid have been on antibiotics for nearly a week. So, probably in the clear. But yeah, Tuesday, I decided when the test came back positive, I was like, I'm just going to chill. We'll see how I'm doing Wednesday. And then Wednesday was not good.
Gargling battery acid?
It felt like it. And then Thursday, I had to go back to work, and I still was not doing great. And then Friday was
good thing you don't
a
have to
little
talk.
better. Yeah. It's not like I talk for a living or anything. But by Friday, I was pretty okay, and I was recovered enough to enjoy our Valentine's weekend celebration, Katie and I, so that was good. I mean, we didn't do much. We watched a lot of Daredevil and cooked a very delicious meal. And then Sunday, I spent most of the day playing games because my kid was gone to my parents' house for the weekend. So I have several games to talk about at length.
Yeah, and since we had an off week, I have a few games to talk about as well.
Indeed. We sort of each have 5, although 3 of them are shared. And we'll be covering those last. We're going to do our individual games first. Which, if you would like to kick us off, Rage, tell us what you've been playing.
So you're saying the game is on?
The game is on. The game's afoot.
So my first game is Sherlock Holmes, The Devil's Daughter, which is the last and, well, obviously most recent of the Sherlock Holmes games from Frogwares. And it's been a very, very long time since I've played a Sherlock Holmes game. Mostly because it requires you to be, well, Sherlock Holmes. That's both a strength and a weakness of Sherlock Holmes games, actually, which we'll get to in a little bit. But they've really changed this game series. For one, it's a lot prettier these days. Used to be back in the day, it was kind of rough looking, even for the games of its time. All the animations were very stilted, and it was almost like a hidden picture game where you had to find the clues hidden throughout the environment to be able to piece together everything about the case. And it was very static. Well, they've changed this to be a more action-oriented game, sort of like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes. Which I don't have much of a problem with, that interpretation of the character, him being more of an action hero, because back in the day, Sherlock Holmes was an action hero. He isn't by today's standards, but back then he was. So, having him being more action-oriented, actually makes a bit of sense for a modern interpretation. And they also kind of nicked Batman's detective vision to try to help out with some of the issues that the older games had. I believe
Sherlock Vision.
Well, I'm trying to think of what they called it. I think it was just investigation mode. Because, they couldn't use detective vision. Ironically enough, huh?
Yeah.
Consultant vision, right? But it's not a dead giveaway of all the clues. You still have to try to sort out yourself. A good example of this, I've only played through one of the 5 or 6 cases in the game, and it seems like each of the cases is independent of one another, which also is a strength in the game, in my opinion. It plays like an episodic game, because Sherlock Holmes adventures, if they are stretched out too long, they become rather tiresome. So having them being self-contained adventures at about an hour and a half, 2 hours in length is about the right place, in my opinion, for a Sherlock Holmes story. But a good example of the detective vision, I'm just going to steal the Batman term because it makes a lot more sense, is during the first case, which is essentially a mini tutorial. It's half tutorial, half a deductive case. And you're contacted by this boy who is looking for you to help find his missing father. And you're in his home. He's a peasant boy, barely making ends meet. And as you're going around, one of the clues I was missing was in the jacket pocket of his father's coat, And I kept missing it until I went detective vision. I just slowly scanned around, and then I found it. But then going back to replay the mission, because after playing the first mission, I wanted to do a Let's Play series on it, but it just didn't want to record well just because of a blurry effect that they do whenever they talk to characters. Mm-hmm. So it just made the video very blocky and noisy, and I have some standards for my content.
Right.
But going back, I was able to find the note on my own. So, it's a hint of where to go. Instead of, you have to use this. You have to do this. And opening up a Sherlock Holmes games to be... a Sherlock Holmes game, I should say, to be more open-ended and allow you to make wrong choices and wrong deductions makes it a lot more accessible to, in my opinion. When you first meet Tom, the little boy, you're also introduced to the deductive reasoning mode, where you look at the character and you look at individual parts of them, or their clothing, of their body, of how they stand, and you try to get a character portrait of that character. So some of them are just gimmies, his pale skin indicates that he's malnourished, and you see a pendant around his neck that has his date of birth. Well, then you deduce, he's 8 years old. But then there's some that are less so. Like, you look at his eyes, and they're puffy and red, and you have a choice between he's been crying recently or he is sick. Well, you were told that he was crying recently, so there you go. He was crying. But then the other one for that particular character is his left hand. The wrist is very narrow, and the hand is a little bit longer than it should be. And you have an option of, he's been injured, or it's a birth defect. And you could deduce a little bit on your own. Well, he's malnourished, and he's a peasant. So a birth defect is the more likely cause, especially since he has no indication on his clothing that he has suffered a recent injury, and his clothing is well tended. So it's little things like that, but you can still make the wrong choice, and it gives you an incomplete picture, which makes the overall case more difficult. And this deductive reasoning also plays into the deduction web. As you complete the case, you get little pieces of clues to put together, the classic spider web of links to try to solve the case.
All the red strings.
Yeah. A matter of fact, in his apartment, there's the red strings on the wall.
That is both... no, that is amazing and cliched.
Yeah. Well, it's Sherlock Holmes, so it's both.
Yeah.
But as you make choices, some of them are gimmies as well there, but also you could draw the wrong conclusions based on what info you have at the time, but you could go back and change up until the very end. But it's a very, at least in the initial case, a very, one way or the other. If it doesn't lead to one conclusion, it has to lead to the other. I'm not sure if the other cases later on will be, one of 3 choices or one of 4. And I don't want to give away the first case because it's still, a fairly good chunk of content. But it's a very fun ride overall. And also the game goes through a lot of different game styles. You have your walking around, investigating. But then you also have stealth sections, which actually aren't that bad. The game is very forgiving, at least on the easy difficulty. You have the option to skip a sequence if you fail it too many times.
That's nice.
Yeah. So basically you're or a puzzle segment you're allowed to skip on the easy difficulty, or just work on it yourself. Which if you skip too many of them, it's going to make it for a very short game. But you have a stealth section. You have an action chase sequence. You have a stealth chase sequence. Trying to think of what else. You have a time that you're picking locks. You do a little bit of chemistry to get a clue. So there's a lot of things that they do to change things up very often, so things don't get too dull, too repetitive in the game. And the fact that you also change characters every so often, like at one point you take control of Wiggins, who is the leader of the Baker Street Irregulars. And I can almost see the blank expression on Jared's face right now. That is the street urchin group that Sherlock Holmes employed from time to time. In the modern interpretations, it's usually homeless people. But in the original stories, it was typically homeless boys or very poor boys who were out on the street doing odd jobs to try to get a little bit of money for their families, if they had families.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
So the fact that they actually put them in instead of modernizing that is nice. They do skip the whole Sherlock is a drug addict whenever he's not working thing, but ratings, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like more, people that are closer to my age or younger playing this. Mm-hmm. Probably wouldn't know that, because I don't think that's portrayed in the modern movies with Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock.
Yeah, Sherlock is very whitewashed.
I think he gets really drunk in one of them, but that's it.
Yeah, and in the BBC series, he does take drugs.
Yeah,
but that because that's a one-off thing for that particular series, or I should say, it's only contained in that series, and it's not shown in any of the other interpretations. People may think, well, that's the BBC's interpretation. No, he was a heroin addict. He did opium. He experimented with a lot of drugs to try to keep from being bored.
Mm-hmm.
But the game is rated mixed, and I do agree with that at its full price for $50 still. I got it for a pretty steep discount, even if you don't consider the $5 credit from the Steam store. Graphically, it's a fairly pretty game. For some reason, everybody sweats all the time, but then again, London, right?
Yeah.
I will say that because it's running, I believe it's running the Unreal Engine, it greatly is affected by how fast your hard drive is. When I had it on my data drive, because it's a little bit on the ancient side, I was noticing a lot of texture streaming, a lot of pop-in. But when I moved it to my SSD, that pretty much all went away. There was still the odd, item here or there popping up, but it's not nearly as bad. But graphically, it's pretty sound, and it runs really well. It's really well optimized. The fact that they've gone for some pretty good voice acting as well is very nice, because that's the other thing, is that Sherlock Holmes could be a little bit stiff and a little bit off-putting if he's voiced incorrectly, but he's still a kind of an ass, but he's a charming one when he wants to be in this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's nice, and it does have a good relationship between him and Watson, at least so far in the one case I've completed. Trying to think of anything else in particular without really going into story spoilers, because, like I said, I only played the one case so far, and a little bit of the second, and I realized that they weren't connected. So yeah, any questions?
I don't think so. I really like the sound of lots of stuff in this game, because it's basically taking Sherlock Holmes as more like the original stories were written, as an anthology.
Yeah.
So somewhat connected by
I think
some of the similar characters.
I think
and
one of the
things,
cases is connected to the previous game in the series, but that's the lone thing, and supposedly you could make sense of what's going on without it, but it makes more sense with it, because I did research that to try to figure out if I want to, just hold off and get the other one, because it didn't go on as deep a discount, or actually it didn't go on sale at all. So I was a little off put by that. You don't want to spend all your money on a sale on games that aren't on sale, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Also, I like the idea that each of the stories, episodes, however you want to look at it, is like, you said they were around 2 hours.
Yeah, at
each.
least the first one was. And it seemed like
Okay.
the second one was going to be about that long based on the pacing that was seen so far.
Yeah, I hope that is a trend that lasts the whole game, because that's really perfect for lots of people to sit down and have that, play through one story at a time as time allows. Because I'm always looking for games that I can enjoy in a short period of time, just because of, having less time, particularly throughout the week, to dedicate to games.
Yeah, and some of the tags on this actually list horror and psychological horror. I would give it psychological horror because there are, that elements in the Sherlock Holmes series. So yeah, I definitely could see that, especially if they go with some of the stories that I think they may be going with here.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was one other system in this that, once again, completely skippable on the easy difficulty. Is the research system, is that you're given a piece of information and you have to go to Sherlock Holmes' archives and try to figure out where that information would be. And, it may be, a flag, and I'm just pulling that one completely random. That's not one of the clues. Well, you may have to go, okay, where would that be? That would be in reference material. So go over there and start looking at the titles and try to figure it out. Once again, you can skip it if you want. But honestly, I found it kind of enjoyable just to, for one, see some of the random shit that he had. Because that's part of the point of Sherlock Holmes, is that when he gets bored, he either gets doped up or he starts researching random things. As a matter of fact, you've watched the BBC Sherlock, right?
I have seen a couple of episodes.
Okay, well, then you probably saw him talking about him doing a research paper on the different types of ashes from cigarettes and pipes, or cigarettes and cigars.
Yeah,
that sounds familiar.
Yes, that does sound.
Well, that's
familiar.
actually a reference to the books, and that's in his apartment. Yeah, there's little nods to the actual canon stories here and there that I really appreciated. But it gives you an idea of some of the random things that would be in his archives to try to sort through. Once again, completely skippable. Most of the actual puzzle elements are skippable, and even the action elements, if you fail too many times, have an option to skip on the easy difficulty. I'm not sure how it affects the overall story, if it does at all. But if it doesn't, then it does add a lot of accessibility to a Sherlock Holmes game that really wasn't there before. Because I remember getting stuck on the very first area of the last Sherlock Holmes game I played, because it required, I actually looked it up later, you had to move the body, then you had to go get a shovel and dig under the body for a clue there. and it was kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Next time it goes on sale, I'll pick it up.
Yeah, I would say it's well worth
especially
the play.
if it goes on sale again for something like $7.
Yeah, I would say it's
very happy.
I say
it's
that sub $10. It's a steal, and I'm not sure. A lot of the downvotes here are mostly talking about the short length. It looks like I didn't have any problems with crashes. I did have like I said, some texture streaming, but that's just it looks like there's only 4 cases according to this. So, but yeah, even still, 4 cases at 2 hours each.
Yeah, I mean 8 hours is pretty perfect for me. So, yeah, I'm very, very happy.
Yeah, there's a couple of the mini games that require outside knowledge, but once again, you can skip them, or if you could trial and error them, because if you fail, it just puts you right back there.
Yeah,
but usually they're pretty common sense if it requires outside knowledge. The one odd one was how to shine shoes with a 1800s era shoe shine kit. But failing that, it just made it so that you couldn't fail anything else in that sequence. So even a failure on something as major as that isn't an automatic failure, which is nice.
So, do you want to go ahead and do Yakuza, or do you want me to do one of mine?
Go ahead and do one of yours so I can take a little bit of a break.
Okay. Yeah, that's the main reason I asked. All right, so the first one on my list is Frontier Pilot Simulator. So this is a sci-fi pseudo flight simulator game. It's not full blown with.
That looks like a plane, not a pseudo.
Touche. But it's not full blown with I'm gonna sit in a cockpit full of instruments and turn all the knobs and flip all the switches. But it does try to shoot for some fairly realistic aircraft control and things like wind currents and drafts and things like that affecting your flight path, and needing to be gentle with takeoffs and landings and making sure having to balance fuel versus your load weight and things like that. So what this is, or the reason I got this game, I picked this up during the Chinese New Year sale as well for, I believe it was $15 or $17. It wasn't as great of a sale price, but I hadn't been looking to buy it anyways, because I want more games that I can use my HOTAS with.
Gesundheit.
Because basically right now it's just Elite Dangerous and Mech Warrior Online, and those are the only 2 games I've used it with. I think I've got a couple others that are compatible, but I've never actually went to set it up. So, I just did some double checking, and everyone says, yeah, it worked great with most HOTAS setups. You don't have to worry about compatibility or anything. So I got it and dove into it. And there's for this game being early access, I don't know if it's supposed to be an alpha or beta at this point currently. It definitely is still fairly early in development. Like if they just dumped the game right now and were like, oh, it's released, that would be very sad and upsetting. Although, that's kind of the gamble you play with early access anyways. But it seems like they've got a pretty long development roadmap set up for this. But most, if not all, of the core systems are in play. You are essentially transporting cargo and passengers around on a fairly recently colonized world. And you're earning money to upgrade your planes or your aircraft. One of them is basically just controls purely 100% like a helicopter. It's a VTOL, but it has no alternative flight mode. Like you can't switch into just a regular plane, whereas the other 2 aircraft do. They all behave as VTOLs, but the other 2 aircraft are designed for larger, longer haul jobs, so you can switch to just a standard aircraft mode to get much, much better fuel consumption and utilize, lift from the wings. But there's a fairly basic economy system in the game, fairly basic upgrade system. with different trade-offs you can get for things you can upgrade on your craft. For example, more engine power versus more fuel consumption, or lighter weight parts, but they are less durable. So if you have an accident and crash into something, you'll take more damage, things like that. So it's not just straight up, upgrades of everything. There's some things you can choose along that. The world is fairly expansive. I'm not quite sure how big it is. I'm sure it says somewhere if you went and dug through the material, but it's at least several hundred square kilometers to fly through. At least the parts that I've unlocked. I'm not sure if I've got the whole map unlocked or not yet, because I can scroll farther than what I can see on the map, but I don't know if it's just ocean. You're in this sort of island chain.
Archipelago.
The game drops you. Yeah, an archipelago. The game drops you out on like a very small island in the very north, and you get the very tiny plane, or the very tiny VTOL that, strictly that with no alternative flying mode. And it's like, okay, make some money and get the bigger plane. And you spend 2 or 3 hours on that island learning how to fly and getting enough money to upgrade to the first large aircraft, which is called the Ox. The first one's called the Scarab. The second one's called the Ox. And then that one has enough fuel to make it from the small island out to the, air quotes, mainland, I guess, the much larger island. But there's several different sections of it as well, and another couple of smaller islands that I can see. So the game world is very large. The economy, fairly sort of standard, buy low, sell high. There are missions you can run. So instead of having to purchase cargo to trade, you're given some cargo and just told to deliver it for a fixed payout. That's less. You make less, but there's no sort of risk involved of like, well, if the price changes where I'm going before I get there, then I won't lose any money, or wouldn't make as much or whatever. So it's fixed prices. Passenger deliveries, there's multiple types of missions for that. There's standard, hey, I need to get to this place, can you get me there? And then there's multiple like round trips, like a scientist needs to go to collect samples from wherever, deliver them out there to collect samples, and then bring them back. There are tourist missions where you can take people out to see sites, and they might want you to land, get out and explore, or they might just want to fly by. So different things you can do with that. And then there's a sort of, I think, story mission. The game doesn't really have a tutorial. It's got a set of missions that sort of introduce you to the basic mechanics, but it's like, hey, press F1 to bring up the help menu for what to do. Your first mission is deliver some cargo, and then your second mission is deliver a passenger, and then it's like, buy an upgrade for your craft, and then buy the next plane. Just that sort of stuff. That's probably the biggest complaint I have about the whole game, is there's not enough information on things. It leaves you to figure everything out on your own. They've talked about adding a more full, fleshed out tutorial down the line, but at this point, aside from the basic missions, you kind of have to figure stuff out on your own. The upgrade system, some of it's pretty straightforward, like an engine upgrade that's 50% more power, 20% more fuel consumption, or something like that. But there are some things that I still don't know what they mean, and I've played the game for like 6 hours or so. It's like cargo upgrade, minus 1750 something. I forget what it is, but I don't know what it is exactly. I think it makes it so that your cargo is less likely to be damaged if you have a crash or make high G maneuvers, but I haven't tested that out yet. Because the biggest thing is you're constantly balancing weight and fuel consumption, because fuel has weight just like your cargo does. So and then adding weight to the overall craft, even though your payload capacity stays the same, the heavier you make your craft, the more thrust you need to take off from a vertical takeoff. There are runways you can use, and you can take off more like a standard plane and rely on the lift from your wings. But there's only a few places that those exist. Most of these are, small outposts or bases or things like that. So you're going to be coming in for vertical landings a lot. So you have to be able to the appropriately and effectively to not crash. The The game seems to be pretty forgiving on that. I mean, if you crash, there's like an escape pod that comes out and it flies you to the nearest base, like full base, not like a little outpost or something. It'll take you to the nearest like major base or trade hub or whatever. And you get a new plane that's exactly like the one that you lost, and you just have to pay an insurance premium for it. But the starter aircraft is only a few $100 to replace it with the insurance. The one that I have right now, which is the Ox, is only a couple of $1,000. And the game never punishes you if you go below zero. So if you go into negative money, it will just let you do all of the basic stuff. And
you start just writing IOUs.
Yeah, you just write a lot of IOUs. So you're never going to be in a position where it's like, well, shit, I fucked up and I'm out of money. I can't fuel up. I guess I'm going to have to sell and go back to the basic ship or restart or something. It'll just let you go into the negative on stuff like that. Which, you know, you'll have to get back into the positives before you can do upgrades or whatever. But at least it's not punishing. It's very forgiving in that way, which I appreciate, because in the beginning, when I was especially trying to work out the HOTAS controls. So, I mean, the default bindings are terrible, obviously. They always are. And then it took me like an hour to get it set up properly. And during that time, I probably crashed a dozen times and went way into the negative at the very beginning. Again, it doesn't explain things very well to you. So you go in the menu and it's like general flight characteristics, flight mode 1, flight mode 2. And it doesn't tell you that the first plane doesn't have 2 flight modes. It only has the what the game refers to as jetpack mode, but I think it should be called helicopter control or VTOL control or something like that. But, you know, where you're not utilizing any lifting force from your wings or anything like that, just relying 100% on your craft's thrusts to keep you up. But it took me a while to figure that out, because I'm like, I'm pushing the key binding to do the change and it's not changing, and some of the other things weren't working either until I figured out like what buttons it was calling versus what my joystick or my throttle actually had the buttons labeled as. And then I figured out like, oh, the first plane doesn't have a transform mode.
Well,
and I still don't know what I still don't know what flight mode 1 and 2 are, honestly, but the general flight controls, I spent just a little bit of time tweaking those so that basically flight mode 1 uses one set of controls and flight mode 2 uses a different one, just because I have enough buttons and sticks and knobs on my HOTAS. That way nothing ever repeats. So I got that all sorted out. Let's see. Other things, good or bad. The performance of the game, at first was great. I was having no problems running this at near max settings at over 60 FPS on the starter island. But once you get to the mainland, there are a lot of mountains, volcanoes, and very thick clouds, and the performance very quickly tanks. So now it even with lots of stuff minimized or turned as low as it'll go, it struggles to stay close to 60. So that's something that they definitely need to work on. And again, that's one of those things that are like, oh, it's in beta, we're working on it, so fingers crossed they do. Their last major thing that they did was redesign the HUD. So I haven't seen the old HUD. The new HUD, it has got lots of more information on it, and it's cleaner and more organized. So, you know, whatever they did, everyone in the community is like, oh, this is great, thank you so much. But it's very enjoyable. The things that really I think it needs the most, more information, better performance optimization, and then some idea of direction for what to do, beyond just like, hey, fly your plane around, check out all this cool stuff, and make some money. Because that's fine for now, but there's only one more plane bigger than the one that I have. I forget what it's called. But it's not that much money. It's like 125,000 credits to get the next one, and then probably another 100,000 to get a bunch of upgrades for it to make it the way that I want it. And it doesn't take that long to make that much money, once you kind of get the hang of what you're doing. So either some kind of story or something that encourages you to explore the map more, or something like that would definitely be needed going forward, I think, for this to be more than just a novelty. But for that purpose right now, it serves it very well. I wanted something that used my HOTAS.
Soon tight.
It's an interesting premise. I like the idea. The general implementation is very solid. And as something that if they add a few more features, make sure and optimize the performance, and then tweak a few other small things, like it would be nice to be able to change the cosmetics of your plane. Different upgrades or different upgrades or parts that you can get for your plane have different colors or designs, and so you wind up with this mismatch looking plane, which might not bother some people, but that kind of bothers me. I like things to at least be all nice and uniform. It doesn't necessarily have to be like flashy, but it bothers me. It's like, oh, this, the front engines are red and the back engines are black, and the additional battery I added so that I could have more power is blue, and the plane itself is gray, and it's like that kind of bugs me a little bit. But otherwise, I mean, it's got a lot going for it. I guess the one thing I haven't really talked about is the plane's handling, which this game would be impossible to play with keyboard and mouse, full stop. They recommend a controller, but everyone complains when using controller that you don't have what's called, referred to in the game as constant thrust. It's basically if you use either the one of the thumbsticks or the triggers as your throttle, it's on or off. And that's all you get, and people, have to feather it or use what's called constant thrust mode, which locks it in place. And with a HOTAS, I mean, you don't have to worry about that because you have full throttle control on the throttle. But
it's a shame that controllers don't have an analog control anywhere, huh?
Yes, but you need both sticks and potentially the triggers as well, depending on how you like it set up, to control all of the flight control surfaces. Because, you've got pitch, yaw, roll, strafe, because, you have a lot of vertical flying, and then you have to have forward and back for when you're in vertical flight mode or helicopter mode or whatever you want to call it. Like, you have to be able to control all of those things, and would need both sticks to do it. I mean, I've got what are they called? Like the little paddles for yaw. And I've got a second joystick on my throttle that I use for some stuff. And then I've got the main stick, the main flight stick, which I use for the most of the aircraft control of the control surfaces. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine using, my Xbox controller for that, because I just don't feel like there's enough analog control surfaces to adequately control the craft.
At least with that attitude, or altitude.
I suppose you could pull it off if you were either just brave enough or got good enough at it. But, I mean, some of the weather is horrendous. But, in a way that makes it challenging to come in for landings at certain bases or from certain approaches. Or, I mean, there are active volcanoes around, and, you might need to avoid those sort of last minute or something like that. The amount of precision maneuvers you need to do to get around most of the flying in the game is what makes it so interesting. And you really need analog controls for all those surfaces. Just on or off makes it very twitchy and difficult to work with. So I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of people who do it. It's all in the discussion forums on Steam, people talking about the best ways to optimize if you've got a PS4 controller or an Xbox controller or a Steam controller.
I wonder if my situation would be a bit better since I have the chat pad.
That might help, because then you could have some stuff on the pad to use, keyboard input for some things. And then there's a small group of people who are like, I've got a HOTAS and I don't have any of these problems. And I'm in that group, like we were talking about earlier before we started recording. Oh yes, the peasants with their controllers. But, I mean, it's a really good game.
Well, my controller's being fucked by a keyboard. No, not even a comeback for that one.
No, I'm not. Yeah, it's a novel. As a novelty, if you got it cheap enough, or if you just want something to play around with and you've got a HOTAS, perfect. As like a full-fledged game, it still needs some work, and as long as it doesn't get abandoned, which at this rate it doesn't seem like it's going to, but you never know. As long as it doesn't get abandoned and they work on, ironing out some of the stuff I mentioned, it'll be a great game that I could fully recommend at its full price, which is $25. So, yay!
Hooray!
So, your turn.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Indeed it is.
Well, my next one, as you spoiled already, is Yakuza 0. This is the prequel to all the other Yakuza games. And, what can I say? I absolutely love this game.
Yay! I love when you love things.
Do I have problems with it? Oh, yeah. But some of the things that I think people would have problems with, I actually really enjoy. I think this might be my favorite open world I've ever encountered.
Okay, that's a bold statement.
And I actually sat and I thought about this because the Yakuza in general is like distraction the game. You're off to do one thing. Well, you run into someone that's having a problem and you hit a sub-story. You do that. That leads to this new little mini game that you didn't know about. So you'd go do that. And then, 45 minutes, an hour go by and you haven't even progressed in the main story like you planned to do at the very beginning. But that makes the world feel a lot more alive. That it's not all centered around you and swirling around you with you at the center. It gives the world a lot more life than, the GTA series or, pretty much any open world I've played. And it probably helps that it's a condensed world. At least I'm only in the second chapter right now. The game is divided into various chapters as you progress through the main story. And still only have one main area with a secondary area I could visit, and looks like there's a lot of room to have additional open world areas. But these the main map that I have access to right now is the size of, I would say, a neighborhood in the GTA series, thereabouts. But it's all foot traffic. There are cars in the game, but they're fast travel. And that's it. You never drive. You're just walking everywhere. But it's not going across the map is a couple minutes at most. But because everything is so compact and close together, it allows for the distractions to, well, for one, to pop up a lot more often, which may irritate some, but it also makes it so that it feels like things are going on. It doesn't feel like it's it doesn't feel like it's Oblivion or Skyrim, where it's 50 square kilometers of random backwoods of Europe with a couple peasants scattered about, and that's it. And maybe a dragon, if you're feeling lucky. It feels like the world makes a lot more sense because of it, because it's in a city.
Right.
Now, you do run into a lot of random combat, but honestly, a lot of it I accidentally trigger myself because there's two different things, and I haven't even gotten into the story yet. The combat is probably the other thing I've seen people complain about, and I will say that the combat does take some getting used to. It reminds me a lot of Sleeping Dogs, actually, where it's a lot of rhythm-based and momentum-based combat, dealing with usually odds that are not in your favor. But the camera can be a bit of a chore at times, and I would say that's my biggest complaint about the game overall, is that sometimes, especially if you're fighting in like an alley somewhere where it's a very tight corridor, the camera could get a little bit wonky, and that's about the worst thing I could say about this game.
Well, that's not too bad.
In combat, you could switch between, well, at least as far as I've gotten so far, 3 different styles. You have a brawler style, which is, what you would expect, a lot of very strong but slow punches that combo together very effectively, very useful against single enemies or slower moving enemies. Then you have a rush style, which is a less damage but faster hits with a lot more dodging involved and a lot more ducking and weaving. Then you have animal mode, where instead of just punching with your fist, you just grab random objects from the environment and start swinging like bicycles and signs and that sort of thing at enemies. which is great for groups if there's a lot of random things that you could pick up that you could see, and you could switch between them on the fly, or you could just pull out your weapon, which could be anything from a model pellet gun that they modified to be very powerful, to a marlin, as in the fish,
as in like the fish.
Yes, as in the fish. Okay. That happens to also be a cannon.
Okay.
Which this game, it has its serious moments, but it can also be wacky as fuck. And I appreciate that. Especially when you're doing some of the mini game stuff, where one of the things I ran into at one point during the night the other night was slot car racing. Something I don't usually see in games. And this guy, your character, Karu, really gets into it. He's like, little model cars that you put in your pocket and race? What would they think of next? That's really cool. And whenever you start a race, he is talking to his car, and then he holds it up to the camera and shouts the name of the car. Just camp all over the place at times. But it's great when it does that, because it breaks up the more serious moments of the main storyline. So I really appreciate that. And let's see, there's slot car racing. There's a bowling alley that you can go bowling in. Fortunately, without your cousin. You could go to the bar and shoot pool. Like 4 different types of games of pool, or play darts, which has like 2 or 3 different modes there. Go to the batting cages. Go to an arcade and play the claw machine to get random things. Which I'm not sure what the prizes do just yet out of that. Play some old retro Sega classics, like Sega arcade classics. Like Outrun, for example. Just so many things to do that it's very easy to get lost. And then you can run into the side stories, which I mentioned before, which could be more serious or just wacky. Like one that I ran into, I don't want to spoil too much about the story. Well, I'm not too far into the story, but some of the side stories are really interesting. Like one of them I ran into, I was doing the main story, and I had to go to a particular convenience store to get an item there. Which, there's stores all over the place. There's different eateries to go to refill your health. Some of them are better to refill your health than others. Some you could get takeout food to carry with you to eat on the run to refill your health. But I was going to this convenience store to get an item for the main quest, and there was a kid there with an exclamation point on his, over him on the minimap, so that indicates a submission of some sort. Well, I'll talk to him, and he talks about this video game that's coming out. This is set in the late 80s in Japan. And Karu's like, well, people are lining up for a video game. Well, pretty much everything is like, what will they think of next, right? For him. People have been there all day waiting for the store to open up to sell a few copies that they have of this particular game. Well, you go in, and I got the thing I was there for, not the video game. Come out, and this kid is, sitting there crying. Someone mugged him and took the game. All right. Well, he says, well, it looked like they went that way, mister. So, go down the alley, find the guy that mugged the kid, beat the ever-living snot out of him. Turns out, as you get there, there was a cutscene, and there was another guy that ran off. He got mugged, and now I have to chase him. and the first kid, a high school student, was talking about, oh man, I bet that guy won't even love the game. He's not a collector like me. And Kaoru's like, you're whining about losing the game that you stole in the first place. So, chase the punk. He gets robbed by a Yakuza guy. all right, fine. Chase the Yakuza guy, and it turns out that and I had to beat up the punk as well. Then I had to beat up the Yakuza guy, of course, right?
Right.
Well, it turns out, I'm going to spoil the one sub-story. He was stealing the video game for his son because him and his wife got divorced, and he's rarely able to see his son, and they bond over video games. And he was talking about, well, that other guy, he's not even a collector. He wouldn't even enjoyed it. When the other one was talking about for the first one was talking about the kid. Well, the kid shows up, and he's like, Dad? and before this, you're laying this huge guilt trip on him, talking about, well, you're taking this to make your son happy, but you took it from a kid that saved up his allowance for months to be able to buy this game on his own. And he's like, oh man, I'm such a dick, essentially.
And then it's the kid's
yeah.
dad. That's great.
And he's like, well, why don't you get me to buy it for you? It's like, oh, Mom doesn't like it when you buy me things. She says that it's dirty money, that it's not good for me to... it's good for me to learn the price of the of things, essentially. So they go off and bond over the new video game. And that's one of the little sub-stories. And it's things like that makes me just fall in love with this open world, where there's 100 different stories in this, well, at least in the game. I'm not sure if it's in this particular city or if it's spread out between this and another open area. But, it's little things like that that's a little break from the more serious crime drama that the main story entails, where you are essentially framed for a murder and you're trying to clear yourself to protect your mentor. Very serious stuff. But then you go dancing, right? Or go do karaoke.
Of course.
That's another one. Of course, karaoke, right? The karaoke is actually a pretty difficult rhythm game. Or at least difficult for me. It's probably one of those things that, you sit down and learn, and then you're able to do it pretty flawlessly. But, it's just all the little things about this game that really made me appreciate it. And plus the fact that, it's a lot of neon. It doesn't have the atmosphere that Sleeping Dogs could have at times, where, just after it rained and everything had that soft glow around it. I hadn't had that, but... the game is definitely not ugly. It's actually a very good-looking open-world game. I've had some streaming issues where it's just, there's a little bit of pop-in that's noticeable for me, but it's not a game breaker. But then, you have just things that go on in the world that just kind of breathes new life into it. Like, you run into this guy that is a shakedown artist that basically beats up people for money. So until you level up, essentially, put money into yourself to learn new techniques and new ways to defend yourself, you have to avoid this guy. Otherwise, he's going to shake you down and take all your money. But he's pretty slow walking, so you're able to see him coming. And he's, this absolutely mountain of a man. He stands over everyone. So if you don't see him, you pretty much just wasn't looking in that direction. You run into people that teach you techniques. You run into just... there's another sub-story that I'm in the middle of right now, that there's a cop that is constantly stopping me to check my pockets to make sure I'm not carrying anything dangerous. So I just hand him a package of tissues. Like, no, this is all I got. Never mind that I have enough fast food in my pockets to have a White House dinner.
Hey-o.
Little political joke there. But overall, it controls pretty well. It's definitely, you need to break the habit of button mashing. It's, like I said, it reminds me a bit of Sleeping Dogs, which had the Arkham style combat where if you button mashed, you got locked into a combo of doing things, and it made it so that it would be awfully painful for you. You need to almost have a rhythm game aspect of finding your openings, hitting people, finding the particular combos that work best for particular types of enemies. If you are running low on money, you could basically go around and start bumping into people to try to instigate fights. or maybe there's going to be some sort of betting later on. I would say I've ran into at least a dozen different mini games already at like 5 hours in. There's just so much to do in this. It's really impressed me. Obviously, right?
Yeah.
And this is a game series that I never really was able to get to play because I pretty much transitioned completely from consoles by this point. This was originally, well, I should say the series, because it was originally on the PlayStation 2, and I played a little bit on PlayStation 2, but not much. And this was one of those games I think only really got a following in the West later in the console's life cycle, if I recall correctly. I don't think Yakuza was too big in the U.S., at least on launch. And it wasn't until much later that it became a lot more popular.
Yeah. I've always wanted to play the Yakuza games, and I haven't ever been.
Well, I found out that this was a prequel to everything, so it seemed like a good place to, this was the most expensive thing I picked up on the winter sale. But if you want, it's also on the Humble Monthly bundle right now.
That's nice.
But yeah, it's really impressive so far. I'm trying to think of anything else really going on. I don't want to go too much into story. For one, I'm not too far in. But you're essentially framed for a murder, and it's revolving around this little plot of land that's called the Empty Lot, which, because it's Japan, for those who don't know the cultural problems of land there, is that land in the cities is usually very, very tough to come by. And the different clans of the Yakuza, this is explained pretty early on, so I don't mind spoiling this, have been buying up all the little bars and little places of business to try to consolidate it into a larger plot of land to be able to sell for a higher value. Well, they're all doing this in this one particular district of the city, and smack in the middle of it is what's called the vacant lot. Well, the vacant lot has this owner that has pretty much gone AWOL. Nobody knows who he is, and the mentor of the main character, Kaoru, which is Diago Dojomia. I don't know. Basically, he saved Kaoru and his friend from an orphanage. They were inspired by him to join the Yakuza and learn to fight because of him. Well, because Kaoru screwed up, in sarcasm quotes there, because he was framed, it comes down on the person that brought him into the organization. And they think that they could pressure him to give some information about who owns this vacant lot. And whoever is able to get the lot is able to essentially complete their plot of land. Think of it as like Monopoly, but it's like a multicolored piece of land that they all have to have to complete the thing. They're all looking for this last piece to be able to complete a good chunk of land to be able to sell it all off. And whoever does that is going to bring in a lot of money into the organization, is likely going to climb the ladder in the organization. But because your mentor is trying to hide this information from the others, it puts him in a bind whenever you are framed for this particular murder. And it's trying to clear yourself, take the pressure off your mentor, and who knows what else, because shit gets weird at times. I mean, things are already starting to throw some curveballs in the story. So I'm looking forward to see where it goes, and just it's a breath of fresh air to begin with, because it's it's not a random American city or even a European city. It has a different style to it, and because of that, it also feels very fresh to me. On top of feeling a lot more lived in, a lot more living than a lot of open worlds. I think a lot of open worlds could take a serious look at Yakuza and learn some very important lessons here. bigger is not always better. This is a very small map. For, by modern standards, I should say. But it has to be one of the best I've played.
Well, I mean, I already wanted it, but I'm pretty much sold now. Hearing you talk about a game this positively.
Yeah, the worst thing I have is a little bit of pop-in, and that's because I'm running it on my data drive, not my SSD. It does have Denuvo, but I believe they are pulling it out on the next patch. There's some rumors that the exe file drops pretty significantly on its actual size, so that's an indication that they're pulling some of the DRM out of it. But it's run amazingly well. I'm running it cranked all the way up, and it's absolutely beautiful. Criticism that some people may have is that the game is not in English, it's in subtitles. Partly due to just, it was a gamble to bring it on PC. This was the first Yakuza game on PC ever. Not counting emulation, of course. But it was cheaper to do this. But honestly, I think it adds to the feel because, it feels like I'm watching a proper Japanese drama instead of... There's that kind of disconnect whenever you see Japan and they're talking English, right? Without it being, they're obviously meant to be speaking English. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I do like it, though, the idea of it being in Japanese and subtitled.
Yeah, it's, there's different, essentially different levels of it. There's the full-on cutscenes where, it's like the Steam Store page has a few of them where, it's highly detailed modern cutscenes, fully voice-acted in Japanese with subtitles. Then you have almost a visual novel-esque thing going on, but that's usually reserved for just before boss fights. Then you have the traditional JRPG. And the traditional JRPG text box is just the text box and a few words that are voiced. Like, there's one character that constantly says, yes. But, I don't have a problem with that because I'm pretty sure those characters weren't voiced anyway, so...
Nice.
And trying to think of anything else that would be a major complaint. And not really. I mean, the main thing it's going to be is that, do you want to play Distraction the game? If so, then here you go. If you want to have a more laser focused, I just want to do the story and that's it. Well, this is definitely not the game for you because, there's so much to do. And I'm pretty sure I'm not even halfway through all the mini games because there's so much. But then again, one of my favorite GTA, or I should say my favorite GTA was San Andreas because of just how much content they had, just how much you could go off and do on your own.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And I'm definitely more interested than I was, like I said before. I'm 100% sold now, so.
Yeah, it's rare to hear me talk this positively about a game.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's ever happened before. That's not true. I'm sure it has a few times, but
well, it's sort of like it's sort of like Yahtzee talking positively about Portal.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there is also the grind, but you're off doing things, so you naturally get money, so it's not that big a deal. And as you level up, I'm assuming that the amount of money you get goes up pretty quickly. Like Mr. Shakedown constantly has like 6 or 7 million yen. So, that's a pretty substantial chunk. So if I'm able to take him down regularly, that's going to really increase my money flow. Okay, now I'm done. I was trying to think of downsides, right. But, it's like nitpicking at this point.
Right. So the other game I have that's just mine this week is Train Mechanics Simulator 2017. Can you guess why I got this game?
Because you want to be a mechanic.
No. For my kid. This is not a very good game. I got it on sale for $2 and some change during the Chinese New Year sale. And I don't think it's really worth that. this game has a lot of problems. It's extremely generic, repetitive. Like, it tries to sell itself like 75 story missions, but really it's just 75 jobs that exist for you to fix trains or go find them, and if they're broken down, and tow them back to the workshop, or if they've crashed, use the little crane to pick them up and put them back on the tracks and then tow them back to the workshop. And the game goes back and forth whenever you're doing the repairs between being incredibly easy, because like the job tells you exactly what you need to do, so you just go in there and it's like boom boom boom, fix these 3 things, train's good. Or ridiculously tedious, because it's not difficult, but it's like, yeah, the train's broken, figure out how to fix it. So it's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go examine everything and find all the broken parts, and when the thing turns green and tells me I can turn in the job, that means that I've fixed it. So that's good, I guess.
So you're fixing Felix.
Yes. Except with more wrenches than hammers.
At least with that attitude.
I mean, the graphics are pretty good. The system, the actual driving your train around on the big overworld map, that's pretty okay. There's some pretty neat sights to see. Like, there's a big castle you can drive past. Like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. Within like 25, I think it's 25 square kilometers, there's like a desert and a mountain range and like an Asian looking area with like cherry blossoms and like a fishing area, and there's like a snowy place and like a little mountain to climb. Like, it's just like, let's throw all of the different types of scenery in. But it still looks pretty good. You can tool around the map pretty quickly and easily. Don't have to worry about things like your own train crashing. Like, you don't have to worry about speed limits or anything. You can just, like, very clearly, it's like, oh my god, if I went around this at, 50 miles an hour, I very clearly would have derailed and crashed and died and exploded. But
yeah, but you're not a quitter.
No. So your train stays on the tracks and you keep going. I think Jim actually reviewed this game. Yeah, and he gave it a negative review and spelled out a lot of the problems. But like, I saw this and I was like, for $2, my kid is going to love this, and it'll be something we can play together. And I mean, really, I think that at the end of the day, even if it doesn't say it, like, that's what this game is for a little bit of a distraction, either for your kids or for someone who is a train enthusiast and wants to get a little bit closer look at some trains. All of the trains are very generic. There's 3 or 4 different diesel engines, 3 or 4 different electric engines, and then 3 or 4 different steam engines. But, you can look at them and be like, ah, yes, I recognize this as looking like whatever type of train. So you can see, like, the Mallard or the Flying Scotsman or something like that for the steam engines. Like, this is very clearly like inspired by that, but they were worried about some sort of potential copywriting issue or something for using names. I don't know if that's a problem for these things, but it's like, generic trains that are very clearly inspired by or, look like more famous trains from history, which is fine. And for, like, to play it with my kid, he loves it and thinks it's amazing. Because it's like, all right, well, like, you go to the different workshops and it's like there's a list of jobs. And it's like, okay, which job do you want, bud? And I'll tell him, like, what each of the jobs say. And he's like, oh, I want to pick that one. So, we'll pick a job, and the train, like, rolls into the repair shop, or you have to go get it, depending on, what the job specifies. And then it'll be like, all right, it says, this part's broken. We need to find it. Where's that part on the train, buddy? And he'll be like, oh, it's over there. And, like, we'll go, and it's like, okay, let's start examining the parts. There are some things like visual clues to tell you which parts are likely to be damaged. There's things like certain parts can be rusty or will physically appear broken, or they'll be not necessarily rusty but discolored. And they don't always, like, I mean, if something is visibly broken, then obviously that's broken. But things that are discolored aren't necessarily always the part that's acting up. But you can get little bonuses if you fix extra parts above a certain threshold that were maybe worn down but not completely broken or, just slightly damaged. You get bonuses for coming in under budget for the job. You don't really have money to manage. I mean, you get some money for completing jobs that you use to just upgrade stuff at your workshop to basically give you improved tools or be able to, inspect parts faster or disassemble faster or whatever. But I mean, honestly, you can completely ignore all of that stuff and complete the game. No problem. It just might take a little bit longer. Or instead of being able to fix stuff, you might have to always replace it with new parts. So, I mean, the benefit to actually upgrading this stuff is you're more likely to come in under budget by repairing parts than replacing them, which, like I said, gives you a bonus, but you don't really need it. And some jobs you don't actually have to finish all the way. You can just, do enough, and I guess it's like, oh, that's enough. You've worked on this long enough, and you can just complete the job and, get the pay, and you forfeit any bonuses, but it counts as a completion, so... And you just work your way through all the different contracts. We've done all of the diesel engine contracts, and we're halfway through the electric engine ones. And then, we've seen some of the steam trains, but he specifically wants to save the steam engine stuff for last. And it kind of starts you out linearly, but once you go through, it'll bump you over to the next contracts and let those open up. And then once you do enough of the electric, it'll open up the steam. So a little bit linear at first, but then it sort of opens it up and lets you just pick the jobs you want to do. I mean, there's not really a lot to say about it. I guess if you do have problems with motion sickness and you're considering this, whenever you're walking around the workshop, there's this constant head bob that you cannot turn off. I typically don't suffer motion sickness, so for me it's just kind of frustrating. When you're actually examining the trains and working on them or driving around on the tracks, it doesn't happen. So that's good. But if you do suffer from motion sickness in games or are more likely to get it, this would probably induce that because it's very exaggerated. Just this slow, very exaggerated, constant head bob that's frustrating. But otherwise, I haven't really had any performance issues. No dips below 60. I don't really know what there is to cause it to dip below that. There's not a lot going on, like I said. Pretty simple, clean graphics, smooth lines, things like that. No crashes that I've experienced. So, I mean, it's not very good. Unless you're in my situation where you have a kid that is into trains, or you yourself are a really big train enthusiast and you just like to feel like you're getting sort of into the nuts and bolts a little bit. It's worth a couple of bucks for those reasons. But if you're looking for some kind of train simulator game, play something else. This is not good for that. So, I've played, this isn't going to show up on the worst games of 2019 or anything for me. But, I mean, it's not horrendously bad. It's just not good, It's below average, I guess. It's unmemorable. So, yeah. Unless you fit the very specific couple of cases I just described, just avoid it. So, yeah, that's the last of the games we played individually. So now we've got the 3 games, the 2 that we did for 2 community nights, and then the one that you and I played together. So, let me get back over. Which one's first on the list?
Borderlands for you and for me. So, Borderlands.
Sweet.
So, finally got me to play Borderlands. And I have to say, the opening of the game is kind of a slog, isn't it?
Yeah, we played it for, 2.5 hours? Give or take a little bit. We both got to level 10 or 11. We did several of the opening quests. We just got the Catch a Ride, which that's where it starts to open up a little bit.
No, it's just it was getting late and I wasn't feeling it this past week, so.
Yeah.
It's just, the thing I think is also that I've tried to play this game several times in the past. For those who have lived under a rock, the Borderlands series is, I would say, one of the more popular, if not the most popular, of the first-person looter shooters. unless you start getting to stuff like Destiny.
Yeah.
But I've tried going through this sequence like 3 or 4 different times before this with different of my friends over the years, and I've always had a problem with finding someone that actually meshes with me because I tend to go off and shoot things, or I like to send loot.
Yeah.
Or I had one friend that actually hacked his save file to give himself a super weapon. Because, that's a lot of fun.
I'm not going to do any of that.
One of the... I can't even think of the first boss that you really... Or the first boss level character. But he one-shot it.
Is it the dude that had, like, the 2 dogs or whatever? That guy?
No, this was after that.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say the first, but the first one that after he made the weapon, because he hacked the save file to make a weapon that physically couldn't work in the game systems.
Yeah.
And it was just utterly stupid.
Just in case anybody doesn't know, I mean, Borderlands is a first-person looter shooter. The original game came out in, 2007?
Mm-hmm.
8? Something like that. It originally released on Xbox 360. And PC, probably PS3, although I'm not 100% sure on that, but probably. And it's a story-based looter shooter. One of the first ones, I think, at least the first one that I can really think of. I mean, there had been other sort of loot-based games before, but when it came to first-person shooters, I can't think of anything before Borderlands. But, there's 4 distinct character classes. It's designed primarily to be played multiplayer with at least one friend. I mean, you can play through the game solo, but it's a lot less fun.
I would say it's hardly any fun with how the game is set up for some things.
Yeah. It's got a very crude, crass sense of humor, and a very distinct cel-shaded art style, which holds up really well despite
which actually was kind of stolen from
a
animated movie that they saw, and they reworked the entire game to emulate it.
Well, that was a good decision on their part, because the art style still really holds up. I mean, the original Borderlands, you're starting to see some cracks in it just because of the age and certain textures and things like that. But, I mean, I went back and checked out Borderlands 2 a little bit as well. I played Borderlands 2 off and on fairly recently within the last couple of years, and it still holds up extremely well. Tales from Borderlands looked great, and I assume Borderlands, the pre-sequel, looks really good too. Because they all stick with that art style and sort of upgrade things like the color palette and color depth, and things like
resolution of textures.
Yeah, texture resolution. But anyways, that's just the gist in case someone has somehow never heard of Borderlands. But you never know. So yeah, you and I played it, and I hope we'll go back and play it some more. I enjoyed.
I just wasn't feeling it this last week. It's just I was tired and grumpy to begin with. So,
yeah. I think you and I mean, I don't know your previous play experience, but compared to the other people I've played Borderlands with in the past, I feel like you and I mesh pretty well. We've got distinct enough combat styles that we don't quite, spend all of our time, running over the top of each other. And I'm just there to have fun, so I don't care if you're like, oh, let's go over here and do something.
My combat style is to start yelling and punching things.
Yelling and punch things, and I tend to hang back more medium to long range. It's you're punch all the things, and I'm like, oh yes, I'll snipe this
or short range shotguns.
Yeah. So, I think you and I mesh pretty well.
I play Brick.
Lots of stuff. And I'm playing
which he's
what's his name? Roland
Brick as himself, and you're Roland.
Yeah, the soldier class.
Yeah, which since I played the second one, I know whose future is a lot brighter.
Yeah. Mine too. I've played through Borderlands 1 and 2 all the way to completion, so. And then I guess Tales from Borderlands as well, which has a few references and things in there to the previous games.
Yeah, it's a shame about Tales from the Borderlands. We're never going to see what happened.
Yeah.
Not sure if there's a lot to say here, just because, we're not that far into it, and it's also a game that, over the years has been talked to death by everyone.
Yeah. And that's fine. But it is something we played that I don't think we've ever talked about before. So, I don't really have anything else to add other than I'm looking forward to getting some more time in with you, buddy. Laughing more at you yelling. That was still funny. By the end of the night, that was still funny. Just randomly, look, oh, I'm hurt. Ah! I'm going to heal up. Ah!
Yeah, Brick's special ability, he flips the fuck out. And it gives him a bunch of damage resistance and heals him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first boss we encountered pretty much just popped in and punched it in the face until it died.
Yeah, you killed like the main boss extremely quickly, and then he had like 2
dogs.
Sidekick dogs, and I got one of those, and then there were a bunch of like trash mobs in the room.
Yeah, I think you were looking for the boss, and it's like, oh yeah, he's dead over there.
He's dead already. Yeah, Roland's thing is he drops down a turret that has a little shield in front of it, and most of his abilities modify the turret to make it either more powerful or have effects like healing people in a vicinity of it or regenerating ammo, things like that. So he's kind of a mix of a support class, and then also, the turret is extremely powerful in combat over time.
Yeah, I played the soldier in Borderlands 2, and I had a problem with the turret that after a while it just was terrible. It just got killed far too quickly. And it was never useful in boss fights at all.
Yeah, the soldier is my favorite class to play if I'm playing solo. Just because the turret basically gives you, distraction, fire support, back, whatever. I do prefer the turret in Borderlands 2, though, because you throw it.
Uh-huh.
And in Borderlands 1, you just drop it at your feet, wherever you're standing. So initially, I was like trying to throw my turret. I'm like, why is it not going? Oh, they must have changed that between the 2 games.
Yeah, and depending on the skills that you had, you could have it where it would stick to the wall or just teleport out real quick instead of being thrown with a lot more range.
You also, in Borderlands 2, you can get a second turret, whereas in the first one, the main upgrade is the
so you get more guns.
More guns! Woo!
Well, it's good to that he listened to the engineer. If that don't work, use more gun.
So, yeah, I'm good. I don't have anything else to say. If you're good with Borderlands, we can move on.
Yeah, I think so. To probably something that you have a lot more to say than me, because this was your first time playing Magicka.
I don't like Magicka.
Well, Magicka is one of those games that it's very polarizing, and also I never had it be this unstable. I've had stability problems with the past, but I never had it act like this.
Yeah, we played it for about 2 hours, and it crashed. Oh God, 8 or 9 times during that time period. It crashed just about every time we loaded into a new level.
Someone crashed. Maybe I shouldn't have hosted it. I'm not sure if it was me introducing the crashes or what, but I never had it act like that. But Magicka is the premier wizard murder, suicide, genocide simulator. It's an ARPG where instead of having set spells, you have, 8 different elements, and you mix and match and create spells, or hit one of the mega combinations, and death happens. And sometimes it's even to the enemies.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that I do like about this game. Like, I like combining the spells. I like that whole system. That's a lot of fun to experiment and combo things.
Yeah, it was a shame that it wasn't more stable for you the other night, because I think that really wore on you.
I like how there's a lot of different character classes. I don't know quite the way to say it, but
well,
like,
they're
for
technically
example,
skins,
I was playing,
but they're non-cosmetic skins.
Yeah, no, they behave very differently. So I was playing as a Space Marine from Warhammer 40k. And I mean, it looks like a Space Marine. I made mine pink because, of course, it's me. But like, my thing was like my combat, or like the battle armor or combat armor or whatever, gave me huge resistances to multiple damage types, and a heal over time, but I could not heal myself or be healed by other people.
And also it gave you a severe weakness to a couple damage types.
Yeah, and then it made me walk a little bit slower. And then I had a gun, and I forget what my staff ability was.
Charge.
Oh, yeah, right.
As said, you put down your shoulder and charge at an enemy, and you could knock him back.
Right.
Yeah, my ability was I was the American wizard. I had my staff was the American flag, and when I used it, I pulled out a grenade and I chucked it. And my weapon, of course, was a gun, and I shoot people. Your weapon,
yeah, wasn't it M16?
Yeah, it was a assault rifle, I believe, on burst mode, and yours was a gyrojet pistol.
Yeah, and then Ghost Shark played as a Tron wizard.
Yeah, his was weird. I never encountered that before.
So he had the light disc, which as his like weapon, which he threw, which was very powerful. He could not be healed with healing spells. He healed with lightning attacks.
Yeah, which was a lot of fun because you were weak to lightning. So if you got hit,
I was weak to lightning. Yeah, so that was pretty wacky. I think we wound up killing each other a lot more than we healed him whenever we were trying to heal him.
The thing is that people were using just pure lightning, but I found that if you mixed in the arcane element, it created a beam, so it went arc to other people, and the healing was doing more than the damage from the arcane.
Yeah,
and that's what the gist of it is that mixing different things, like you throw a shield into the mix. You could throw down a bunch of mines, or you could put a resistance on yourself, or you could actually enchant your weapon to do extra elemental damage.
Yeah, there's like an earth spell, which if you use it by itself, you just like magically throw huge rocks, but you can combine it with fire to make giant fireballs.
But there's also unlike elements. So, for example, if you were shooting a fire beam and I shot a water beam and we crossed the streams, they explode.
Yeah, a huge burst of explosion of steam, right?
Pure arcane energy, and it would probably insta kill you.
Oh, okay, but you could still you could make steam. You could use that to damage people.
Fire and water is a bad example. I would say more like arcane and life is a better example, because those don't create a sub element.
Right.
But there's also a long chain of elements that you could, like the meteor storm was like 9 or 10 different entries to be able to trigger it. And it had to be...
But that called down a massive meteor storm over the whole screen, which hurt everyone.
Yeah, because friendly fire is permanently on.
So, I mean, the things that I really disliked about this game, if you took them away, would make it really boring. Like... like I said, we killed each other more than enemies killed us.
Yeah, but also revives were very quick.
Yeah, but like that constant, like, oh, I'm doing something, no, I'm dead. Revive me, please. Just like constantly, like the constant chaos on the screen. Like, I don't like that. But if you take it away, then one of the game's most unique and interesting qualities is gone. So it's like this weird catch-22.
Well, also a lot of that was I think I was the only one that actually had played the game a fair amount.
Yeah, I had never played it.
Yeah, so people were using a lot of AoE abilities that was killing other people. And if you noticed, I was purposely staying away from everyone else.
I mean, I was trying, but the fact that I couldn't heal myself, like, it was fine
that was something else,
up until Ghost Shark joined us. Because the thing that healed him, like we already said, was the thing that I was weak against. So if I kept accidentally getting caught in people trying to heal Ghost Shark...
which you did cross my stream a couple times.
Yeah, I'd get hit by the beam, or just like a regular lightning blast, which arcs across multiple targets, and then I would take massive damage, and then I couldn't heal, and then I would die. And then when you respawn with a very small amount of health.
I think you would have enjoyed the game a lot more if you didn't take Space Marine.
Yeah, but I just kind of stuck with it at that point, because I'd kind of figured out what I was doing with Space Marine. I didn't want to swap. I mean, I'd be willing to try it again. Like, I would never in a million years play this game by myself or with a group of friends that wasn't, like us, just that all get along and just, like, fuck with each other all the time.
Yeah,
Like, I couldn't play this with some of my friends that are much more serious, because everybody would get frustrated and mad, and then they would just be miserable. But it was fun and wacky. Like, the time spent together was fine. but I didn't really like the game very much, and the crashing didn't help. You know, but I mean that's something that honestly was just like,
yeah, that like I said, that was a weird
cherry
thing that I'd never really seen happen before. Yeah, it's a shame you don't have the DLC because I'm pretty sure you don't. I'm just double checking. No, you don't. Because I think you would really enjoy Magica Vietnam. Because it's pretty much a take on every single Vietnam era movie with wizards. That's where I have the American wizard from. And it's just silly.
Gotcha. I mean, if it was, I'm sure it gets super cheap. I mean, I would get it.
Maybe have you host, see if that helped, because maybe it was just a quirk of my system, because computers always have different personalities, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a shame that you didn't.
I mean, I
like
pretty much
it.
said my piece about it.
Now, if it didn't have the crashing, do you think you would have? You would have been able to put up with the constant deaths.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was having a good time with our group together. I mean, I was laughing my ass off at all the situations we got into. Like I didn't like the game, but I enjoyed the experience.
And also, it's full of references. Unfortunately, you missed a number of them, because a lot of them are in the cutscenes. Stay a while and listen, and I'll tell you a story. A story of...
And the game kept crashing.
Yeah, a story of ghouls and goblins. Of... trying to remember the rest of the opening sequence. But, they reference like 5 different things immediately. One of the last major fights we did was against the knights who said knee, and they're constantly yelling shrubbery.
Yeah, which that was a very obvious reference and very funny, but
or killing the king, or the king killing the guy, and the obvious Darth Vader reference.
Yeah.
Or even before that, the James Bond reference. See, this is the type of reference heavy game that I don't mind as much as Borderlands. Because on its own, it's still funny. It doesn't require you to know exactly what's going on. If you came into the king's throne room and you saw this huge convoluted machine to kill the king, instead of just killing him, it would still be funny.
Yeah.
But hearing them yell "double rainbow," what does it mean? It doesn't make any sense if you don't know the reference.
Whoa. Double rainbow. That's a deep pull on the internet, man. That's from like
that's one that I could think of immediately from Borderlands 2 that's in the game.
Yeah, I don't remember that from Borderlands 2. I mean, I just don't remember it. So, I mean, that does help make your point. It's like that sort of thing is not really memorable, and if you don't know what it is, then you won't get it. But yeah. No, I did. I think the James Bond reference was my favorite, with the convoluted death machine.
And you kill him by shooting the guy that's on the bicycle powering the machine.
Yeah.
And when you never actually kill him, you knock him, you knock the bicycle loose and it takes off.
Doesn't he go crash into a wall?
He crashes through a window, but he's fine. Maybe.
Probably not, if I'm honest.
Come on, with all the death and destruction in this game, do you think they would just kill a random guy on a bicycle? Yeah,
yes.
They would, wouldn't they? I wonder if it'd be better for you to play with just me, just the two of us.
I don't know, maybe
less chaos to let you learn the game.
I mean, I think I got a pretty decent handle on it. Next time we play, whenever that is, I'm definitely going to do someone different than Space Marine. But otherwise, I think I got a pretty decent handle on how to play. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the only thing that...
it's one of those things, it's simple to learn, but maybe difficult to master all the potential combos and the best situations to use them in. Plus memorizing a few of the, the actual, spells or whatever.
Yeah, because some of them are very tough, because the big one is... I think Rainstorm is probably the toughest, or the that big fire spell, because you have to hit like fire, water, fire, water, water, fire, water, or a very precise sequence. Or the meteor storm is also a bad one, where you have to create a steam, and then you have to create a fire, then another steam.
Yeah.
And sitting there and just doing outside combat's fine, but whenever you're trying to do it during combat, it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that one took me a little bit to try and get figured out, because I was like, I just didn't like notice it first, like, because the icons are pretty small. I was like, is that steam? Like, it took me a little bit to figure out it was steam, because it looked similar to, I believe, the lightning icon. Mm-hmm. And so it kept canceling it out. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But then
there's also things like, if you're wet, if you try to use anything that has lightning in it, you shock yourself, and you don't actually start charging the spell.
Yeah. So then you have to light yourself on fire to put out, or to dry yourself off. But, yeah.
Or you get frozen a lot easier if you're wet into just a solid block of ice.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a lot of, like I said, really interesting concepts, but there's lots of stuff that I didn't like about the game, so.
Yeah, see.
Not a good game in my...
Yeah, I really like Magicka, but the thing is that it was just having so many technical issues that it wasn't a good night to show it off to you. Which is disappointing.
That's okay. I mean, like I said, I played again, so. And then let's see. Last game on our list is DEF CON, which we played last night for community game night, which is another game I had never played before.
And another one that I played a fair amount.
But I got it figured out pretty quickly, but the way that the game plays out, I wasted essentially the first 3 phases learning what to do. Yeah, so all of my stuff was way out of position when the actual...
Well, I was going to say, DEF CON is essentially the ending sequence to War Games, the 1982 movie, where it's playing out a global thermonuclear war. And our game, if you don't account time acceleration, was like 2 hours on the game clock? Actually more like 3 or 4.
It was closer to 3 hours. We did a lot of time acceleration there at the end.
No, I was talking about the actual game timer, not how long we...
No, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it was like somewhere between 3 and 4 hours on the actual timer, because towards the end we started doing a lot of time acceleration, because it's like, well, just waiting on all the nukes to fly across the map, because everyone's out of, whatevers. So we just gotta wait.
Yeah, and it's a very rock, paper, scissors game where the different fleets, different makeups beat certain things. Carriers are very vulnerable, but are able to send out fighter groups or send out bomber groups to be able to launch a shorter range nuke. Battleships are able to defeat carriers really easily. Carriers are able to defeat subs by dropping bombs or just surface fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And
then submarines can launch medium range ballistic missiles, and then also they're pretty effective against, is it battleships and other submarines in combat?
I think so. But they're also able to set their sonar to active to be able to hunt down other submarines a lot easier. But it also makes them more visible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very simple game in concept, but there's a lot going on at any particular time. Once you get to, I would say, DEF CON 3. Because you're trying to maneuver into position and also try to scout out the enemy. And during different phases, different things are allowed to happen. Like in DEF CON 5, fleets are able to move out, but like DEF CON 3, I think it was, you were able to launch fighters to be able to scout.
Yeah, I think in DEF CON 1 and 2, you can just move fleets around.
No, it counts the other way. It's 5 to 1.
What did I say?
You said 1 and 2. That's when nukes.
Oh.
Yeah,
I knew it in my head. I promise I knew it in my head. I just said it backwards. But I guess I'm thinking like in phase 1 and 2, which is DEF CON 5 and 4. And that's where it crisscrossed in my brain. But in 5 and 4, it's what? You can just move fleets around, and you can like communicate with other players to, I guess, try and set up alliances, although we were playing on a team against the AI, just because, I mean, I'd never played it before, and you had not played it in a long time, and I think Cube, he played a game with Kyle earlier, but I think he said that was the first game he'd played in a long time. So we were all like, let's team up.
And honestly, it was a lot more fun.
Yeah, I guess in the first 2 phases, it's just maneuvering and posturing. And,
and the thing is that fleets move very slowly, and subs move even slower.
Yeah. So and
also DEFCON 5 is whenever you set up your infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And then DEFCON 4 is moving, and then 3 is also moving, and then you can launch fighters. 2, you can start having combat with naval units, and then in DEFCON 1 is when you can start using the nukes from your ICBMs, your subs, and then the
carriers.
Bomber-launched nukes. Yeah. So, I mean, the goal of the game is basically just blow up the most shit.
No, actually, the goal of the game,
most of your shit without being blown up.
The goal of the game actually is to lose the least.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I was saying.
Not necessarily. I mean,
enemy stuff.
A lot of it is just how much you're able to keep, because I actually won our match mostly because I was pretty much unscathed.
Well, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, part 2 of that I was saying is blow up the most enemy stuff and keep the most of your stuff from being blown up.
All right.
I was completely untouched until near the end. Like, whichever computer player had all their stuff in Asia, whenever they decided to go buck wild and launch all of their nukes at once, that's the only time I got hit. And I think that was when you got hit the worst.
Yeah, but they targeted my infrastructure. So it didn't really count against me. Whenever they launched something at our city, I had enough defenses in place to be able to just swat it down. And I had my sub-fleet in range to be able to just start peppering them with nukes myself. So I was able to knock out a couple of their launchers and cost them probably about 10 different nukes. And that's the other thing, is that nukes are a finite resource. So you have to be careful about spending them too haphazardly.
Yeah, nothing regenerates. No nukes, no fighters, no bombers, no ships. When they're gone, they're gone. So I made the mistake early on, just because I didn't know what I was doing, of losing a lot of fighters and bombers because I sent them out too far or would send them on multiple missions and they ran out of fuel, and then they would crash and then I couldn't get them back. And then towards the end of the game, I had this problem of like, well, I've got tons of nukes in my air bases and on some of my carriers, but I have but I only had a few bombers, so I kept having to rebase the bombers to utilize the nukes, and that eats up valuable time. And then my sub fleet, because I messed up with didn't realize how slow submarines were.
Scrub marines.
And putting a whole fleet of subs makes them, I guess, slower than a standard fleet, or I didn't quite figure out how the fleet speed works.
Yeah, but the thing is that also, if you have something, a surface vessel mixed in with a sub, it gives an indication, there's something there.
Yeah. So I did have a couple of fleets that had subs mixed in, but it was mostly I put all the subs by themselves in their own fleet. So, but I mean, I sent it off on a wild goose chase at the beginning, and it was out of position the whole game until the very end. I got it close enough to India to dump all of the nukes on all the cities in India, which I had already nuked with aircraft deployed bombs. So it was kind of a waste, but I was like, I mean, the timer's almost up. If I don't launch, all these nukes are not going to get used. So I turned India into glass.
Yeah, there was it you or Cube that I stole a couple targets from just because I was attacking with my subs?
Yeah, it was Cube. Because you and he focused a lot on America,
well,
and then you hit.
Well, I was in Europe, I was in Europe, so my natural targets was either Africa, which was you, so that would have been that would have been a dick move. Actually, impossible for me to do, but still. Western Russia, because Russia is a big ass piece of land. So it's a little hard for me to hit Eastern Russia or Eastern Asia, I should say, or just sail across the sea and hit North America. So I chose North America, and I also softened up Western Russia to be able to do some damage there. And actually, did some pretty significant damage at one point.
Yeah, I mostly went after East Asia once I kind of got my act together. I wasted most of my ICBMs early on because I didn't quite realize, how the whole system worked. Because it's not like, you can't like target all of them and they all launch at once. They launch sequentially and there's a timer on each launch. So, I mean, you can use multiple sites to ensure that you get a really good saturation to essentially prevent them from being able to shoot everything down. But I didn't do that initially. I'd like, okay, I'll open up this one site and dump 10 nukes, or I think it's 10 in the silos. Dump all 10 like in this region. And then they all got shot down because I didn't realize that.
Yeah, at one point...
So I wasted a lot of my ICBMs.
Yeah, at one point I nearly got nuked, and I thought it was going to get through, so I switched my silos to attack mode and peppered I would say about a third to a half my payload of those silos on Western Russia. Yeah, it was a bad day. But on the plus side, Russian winters are going to be a lot colder now. And warmer because of all the radiation. And based on what we know of Japan, Russia's going to get a little wacky.
Yay! Which I nuked Japan. I hit Tokyo and another city. I hit a bunch of cities in Asia and then India. I hit every city in India multiple times. I got an achievement for nuking a city that had 0 population left.
Which takes dedication, I might add.
It does. Well, I mean, you have... How many ICBMs do the subs have? 5? Or not ICBMs, but MRBMs.
I think it's 6.
It's 5 each. It's 6? Well, you
5
can get
or 6.
You get 6 ships in a fleet, and I launched all of those nukes at the 4 cities in India. So that's either 30 or 36 nukes
Sheesh.
that I launched at 4 cities.
Fuck these cities in particular.
Yeah, fuck you guys in particular. So I think we're playing it again next Monday.
Yeah, that's the plan. I just want to play against AI again because it's more fun just sending bullshit instead of having to try to strategize.
Yeah, we were doing a little bit of strategy there.
Yeah, but it was more coordinated.
You two overwhelmed America, and I don't know if I just got lucky or if I did good enough to keep the computer in Asia from doing much until the very end.
Well, I think I was playing passively, and also the one in Southeast Asia, because Asia was divided into 2, essentially North and South. It had most of its silos over in China, essentially. So it left a good chunk of the land pretty much undetected because silos... They swap between a defensive mode and an attack mode. When they're not launching nukes, they're attempting to shoot down any aircraft that's in their airspace. So because of that, whenever you were attacking India, there was going to be a very limited defense there because there was likely only one silo there.
Yeah, and Cube and I worked together to take out the one silo that was in India.
Yeah, and I also did a screw up because I thought I could send my sub fleet essentially through the Arctic to get over to near Alaska to be able to attack the eastern part of Russia and down into China. But I hit an invisible wall, and the sub fleet moved so slowly that that was pretty much that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm not going to be able to get around this.
Yeah, I initially sent my sub fleet. I was sending them towards the Indian Ocean, and then I turned them around and headed them towards North America. And then, once you two had basically wiped out North America, because Cube was South America, I turned them around and headed them back towards the Indian Ocean. So they basically just did a big old loop. But they, like I said, they managed to get close enough to India, like just barely in range. But I was like, fuck it. We're in the countdown timer. There's like 20 minutes left. Gotta launch them.
Yeah, I was saying there with one of my sub fleets there in just off the coast of New York, waiting for a distraction and be able to just pepper the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, and this game, I mean, it takes a long time. I mean, you'll wait. Even the short-range ballistic missiles that launch from bombers, you'll wait.
Well, the thing is, we weren't speeding
4 or
up time.
5 minutes for them to hit. Yeah, but I mean, if you're playing it at 1x speed, although it does have a real time mode, which what was that, work mode?
Yeah, work mode essentially
like
stretches the game out to, I think it's 8 or 10 hours. It's meant to be played over LAN, like an office, which would be hilarious.
I'm gonna try and play it at work one day and just see how it goes. Just issuing orders and then leaving it, because the thing is that, like, if I'm seeing clients, I can't look at it but once every 30 minutes to an hour, so things might still go really badly.
Well, hey, look at it this way. Depending on the client, it may either really interest them or really spook them.
Yeah, I can actually think of clients who it would go both ways on. But yeah, I don't...
I think that's about it for the end of the world as we know it.
And I feel fine.
Well, that's a first.
So
let's see if we can keep the streak up. Or sorry, do it again next week. Then that's a pattern. Then if we do it 3 times, that's a streak.
Woo!
And hey, we're right at the 2-hour mark.
Indeed we are. So let's, unless you need a quick break, let's go ahead and
I wouldn't mind
at
least getting up and stretching for a moment. So, quick break.
That's fine. Quick break. The news. Moving on to our first news topic of the night, the day, whatever. Activision Blizzard lays off 8% of its employees. Yeah. Now, this news broke last week, but because we didn't record last week, well, we're getting to it now, and this is a big topic that we didn't want to leave out.
It's such a shame that Activision Blizzard is struggling and they're not having, something like record revenues or anything.
Like, what is it, $60 billion in revenue? And yes, revenue is not the same as profit. I understand that. But if you've got $60 billion coming in, what the fuck are you doing if you're losing money? Are you the U.S. government or something like that? Yeah, you see what I did there? Zing!
Hey, those flights to Florida to play emergency golf don't pay for themselves.
Yeah.
hey,
oh, no, I'm sad.
Hey, you brought it up.
I did. This one's on
That's
me.
on you.
So essentially...
Until the shutdown actually happens, then you blame the Democrats.
Yeah. Right. So essentially what happened is that... what's his name? The person who actually made the announcement, the CEO?
Kotick?
Bobby Kotick.
I always screw up
Kotick. I'm not sure how you say his name. I remember from Jim Sterling's Jimquisition, he said Bobby Kotick. So
yeah, but then again, are you going to trust Jim Sterling's pronunciation?
Whatever. Bobby. Good old Bobby.
I'm not sure if you can use
Activision
good.
Blizzard CEO Bobby. Came out, and basically, I'm just going to summarize up everything. We're doing great, or no. We're having lots of sales. We're bringing in lots of money. Our revenue is up, but we're failing to meet expectations. We need to sort of trim the fat to make sure that we continue to bump up our profits in the coming year. So even though we're bringing in shit loads of cash, a bunch of you are losing your jobs. Bye.
Yeah, and they hit the esports department pretty hard, and Blizzard is pretty much pulled out of esports with the exception of StarCraft now.
Even Overwatch?
Overwatch, they haven't pulled out completely, but I'm pretty sure the Overwatch League hasn't performed like they originally hoped. Let's see. Overwatch League viewership. Let's see what they're actually pulling in this. Well, let's just put it this way. Top story. Overwatch League fans escorted from Blizzard Arena after accusations of harassment.
Oh, good. So
I'm not seeing any numbers on this. So let's see stats. Reports 10.8 viewers on the Overwatch League finals. That was 6 months ago. So that's not bad. That's not bad at all, really.
Yeah.
But is that all the viewers though?
Don't know. But I mean, back on topic. This whole thing is just so frustrating. Like, they're bringing in record numbers, you know, bringing in tons and tons of cash, tons of revenue. You know, it's quoted here in the article from TechRaptor. Where is it? Bobby Kotick reports that the company once again, and this is the quote, once again achieved record results for 2018. Thanks to the success, they're increasing dividends to stockholders by 9%. But even with success, the company failed to reach their expectations. So, it just makes me so mad.
The fact that
capitalism sucks.
Well, that, and also, the workers need to unionize, because we see this cycle year after year after year. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting to see another major layoff before the end of the year, just because this one's happened so early. Where, they're not meeting expectations. Maybe a game didn't sell quite as well as it should have. Who knows? Maybe it'll be Anthem. It's tough to tell right now.
Yeah, but would not be a huge surprise if it was.
But, didn't meet expectations, so let's shut down the company. Still making profit, but not making all the profit.
Yeah. And another thing is like, this is covered very thoroughly in the Chimquisition,
which will be in the show notes.
Go watch that. But essentially, they have had explosive year-on-year growth for the last several years that's just not sustainable long-term. Like, yes, you can have great years or even great periods, but everything sort of levels off and comes back down. There are booms and busts in any industry, in any market. And if you're riding high, you won't be for forever. And you have to make plans for long term. Okay, what are we going to do when we have some bad years or bad seasons?
Yeah, but the video game industry doesn't think long term. They think short term.
I mean, most businesses, particularly in the United States and several other extremely capitalistic countries that don't have lots of regulation and things like that,
regulation
tend to have these problems.
We should get rid of it. Right.
I mean, there's lots of problems with that in my industry, in the mental health field. Always trying to figure out how can we squeeze the most money possible out of insurance companies and out of people while providing the least amount of care as possible. And we're constantly fighting that at my clinic. Like, look, we get it. You want to make money. The way to make money is to hire more people to actually do these jobs instead of trying to squeeze so much labor out of all the rest of us. But that's another discussion for another time.
Yeah, before long, you're going to need therapists for the therapists.
But seeing this sort of play out on a much larger scale, with what to me is unfathomable amounts of money, $60 billion, I can't even picture that in my head, as a thing.
Well, see, it starts with a 6, then a 0, then a B.
Right, but I mean, you know what? I think you know what I mean. It's like, $1 million is a lot of money.
A skit that Penn and Teller had on Bullshit, where they talked about large numbers, where after a certain point, our brains just can't comprehend that number.
Right.
You have the concept of 1, you have the concept of 2, you have the concept of 5. But once you get past, 10, you start grouping things together. Right. 50, that's a bigger group. You're not thinking about the individuals. So whenever there's a talk of billions and trillions of dollars, they're just words at that point.
Yeah. And to some extent you can quantify some of it. $1 million is to me a shitload of money. But $1 million is a really nice big house or something like that. I can kind of quantify that. But when you get up into the tens, hundreds of millions, billions, it's I have no, tangible comparison to that. They're just numbers on a scoreboard, basically. That makes, in concept it makes sense, but trying to put it into perspective is practically impossible for someone in my position. So these huge numbers they're throwing around, it's you don't need to lay off 8% of your workforce, which worked out to be about 800 people across all of Activision Blizzard's properties, because they're more than just you think of Activision Blizzard, you think of the two main companies, but they also own quite a few other smaller studios and other things. It says on here, Activision, Blizzard, King, and High Moon were the ones that mentioned, but they have more than that they own or have a controlling share in or something like that. So, it's a lot of employees. They had nearly 10,000 employees across all of their entities.
Well, no, Activision Blizzard had 9,600 employees in 2018. So about 800 people will be looking for new jobs. And then there's the Twitter tag, Activision Blizzard layoffs, and people trying to snatch up all the talent. And then the cycle repeats all over. What is the turnover rate? Like 5 to 6 years on average before programmers and the art people just are tossed aside and a new group is brought in. I know it's an absurdly low number for the industry compared to other entertainment industries. You don't hear about massive layoffs like this in other media industries at such a regular interval. It never happens like this.
I have read reports and seen things that some people say every 2 to 3 years, and then some people say that the cycle is a bit longer, 5-6 years. You don't find a lot of career people who have been at one company
typically if you do, they're the executives.
10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. I think that, what I've read and seen just comes from different devs are, I don't know, worse about it. Like, as soon as they're done with a project, they'll dump everyone, except for maybe like a few key staff or like their upper management or whatever, and start from scratch for their next project. And then other devs will keep people on for longer, but the cycle is still relatively short compared to most careers. Although I'm not sure how much of that can come down to just that. There are some trends that you see in a lot of industries where the young people are staying with jobs for shorter amounts of time, particularly in America, because pay increases, raises don't keep up with inflation.
And also your insurance is tied to your job.
Yep, packages, like benefits packages and things don't ever get upgraded or rarely do. So it's actually better, more economical for you to just get a new job somewhere, because the starting salary will be higher than whatever yours was, because the starting salaries do account for inflation and things like that. So that is a trend that we're seeing more and more with millennials. Us damn millennials ruining everything.
With your avocado toast.
And wanting to be paid a living wage. I know. Fuck us, right?
Well, you've been trying.
So, yeah. I'm not sure how much of that comes down to the gaming industry, but you're right. They do have a much higher turnover than I've seen in any other industry in terms of layover and stuff.
Well, and part of it is that, it's... the job market is just absolutely huge for it. Kids go into gaming and it's like, oh, I want to create the next great game, and they get into these companies and are just crushed. It's really depressing whenever you think about all the hopes and dreams that just get crushed under EA's boot or Activision's boot or even Ubisoft's boot. Pretty much any of the major groups.
I almost went that route. I almost went to school for game design. But it was right at the cusp, I think, of when this really started to become a noticeable trend. Mm-hmm. Like in the, because I went to college in the late 2000s. I started college in 2008. So, right then around that time when some of this stuff was just starting to become noticeable, or I don't want to say it just started happening then. I'm sure this has been going on for a lot longer than we realize, but due to the growing number of games journalists and increasing coverage on stuff and gaming becoming more mainstream, like I started to notice it, and I was like, well, I don't want to do this. I want something that's more sustainable. So I went with therapy. Became a therapist, which is not a very high paying career generally. But I'm much more satisfied with my work, and I don't feel the crushing pressure of being forced to work.
Yeah, you would think you'd have to be crazy going to it.
And I'm not constantly in fear for my job, basically. And a lot of game devs, that's what they say. It's constantly worried we're going to get let go, or, the project's coming to a close. Are they going to hold on to me, or am I going to be looking for new work and have to move again or whatever? Like, I've seen tons and tons and tons of stories about that. Some, a lot of them in the wake of this.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why you see all the game devs just start to group together at their headquarters. Yeah, there's a couple in Austin, Texas. There's, of course, San Francisco, which I never understood why they chose there. Because that's like the worst place possible for land values. But hey, avocado toast for days.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at some point, too, there might have been some incentives or something that prompted them to go there, or business reasons that made more sense. But nowadays, I don't know why you wouldn't just find, go to Tennessee or Alabama or Georgia or something and buy some land there. It's real cheap.
Oh, yeah, it's real cheap here as well. As long as you don't mind some mine contamination.
Well, most of Tennessee's power is extremely cheap, being provided by TVA. We have a lot of hydroelectric and nuclear power in the state. Cheap, relatively cheap energy. I don't know why there's not more game devs in Tennessee, but that's a discussion for another time, I guess. Ooh, that would be a fun side topic. What game developers or studios or something are or have been present in your state?
I'm pretty sure it's just the little indie studios at most for me.
Yeah, possibly. You never know, though. Doing a quick Google right now.
Well, there's the Game Dev Expo, so there is something, but it's on the border between West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. So I have a feeling it's more not for my state. Yeah, my state has absolutely nothing that I can find. There's a couple random ones here or there, and that's about it. But yeah, that's about what I expected. Hey, here's an article about Fallout 76 partnering with West Virginia to promote tourism. Hey, there's a segue.
Nice. Yeah, let's go ahead. I don't know how much more I have to say about this really, other than it sucks and they sucks. So fuck them. Fuck Activision Blizzard.
And speaking of fucking things,
fuck Bethesda.
Did you really think we were not going to have Fallout 76? This is a story that's kind of just making the rounds now that happened a couple weeks ago. I hadn't seen anything about it, at least. Had you?
No, I hadn't. We found this right before we started recording. You were looking up something on YouTube.
Yeah, it was Young A's video about Anthem, about the grind wall that you hit during the main story. And you didn't believe me on just how bad it was.
Well, I mean, I just didn't know.
But I saw this and I just froze. Bethesda broke their promise that Fallout 76 microtransactions would be cosmetic only. Who's surprised? Raise your hand. No one? No one?
I don't think
Bueller? To be fair, I wasn't expecting it like this. I was expecting either those fabled lunchboxes that we keep seeing pop up, or the card packs. But no, they went even scummier route. What they did was, at the beginning of the month, they had a set of costumes called the Outcast, it was? Or no, the Unstoppables. And the Unstoppables are a group of superheroes, I believe, in the Fallout lore. This is the first I ever heard of them, so maybe it's new with Fallout 4 or Fallout 76.
So some of them have been in previous games, like Grognak the Barbarian.
Okay, I didn't realize he was part of this group.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it has been flushed out in lore previously.
I do remember the
Grognak
comics in New Vegas. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But they had cosmetics. Yeah, big surprise. They patched the game and probably broke something and put in a bunch of cosmetics. But in this event, if you were wearing a costume of one of these 5, you would get a 15-point health buff. And if you were...
Which you think 15, and you're like, that doesn't sound like very much. But actually, based on, we looked at the table, it's the equivalent of 12 points.
Well, no. That's with all the because this buff stacks.
Oh, that was all 60?
Yeah,
That
this
was all
buff
60?
stacks. So if
Okay.
you have a group of 4 people, and they did something insidious and made it so that it was unique costumes, so you would have to coordinate, you would have a 60-point health buff, which was the equivalent of about 10 or 11 points into the endurance stat. Or to put it this way, it was 10 health points more than the biggest HP buff in the game. Or I should say the baseline HP buff in the game, because I'm not sure if they have another HP buff beyond buff out. But buff out has a 5-minute timer on it. This is permanent for during that event. And of course, to stave off the pay to win cries, they did make one free, but remember, it's unique costumes. So if you have a friend and you're using the free one, well, they're going to have to pay up, or vice versa. Incredibly scummy, huh? It's just, I don't see how people are looking at this and saying this isn't pay to win, because this is a huge advantage.
It's definitely, buy power. You're buying power. An argument, I didn't see this made anywhere, but I'm sure somebody made this argument. It's like, well, the biggest focus of Fallout 76 is PvE.
Yeah, but it's PvP.
It's not like you're using it against other players. You can avoid PvP. Like, I'm sure that argument was made somewhere. So, sure, technically not pay to win, but it's still buying power.
Yeah, and
which is still
and
scummy
think about
and
this.
shitty.
Okay, the base HP in the game is 250. You have a group of 4 people with the 60. Then you put on the buff out, which is another 50.
So you can get essentially roughly a 50% boost from the base health.
Yeah, I mean, that's just absurd. And people are saying this isn't buying power? Really?
Yeah, if you go look at the 2 subs, just the general Fallout sub versus the Fallout 76 subreddit, there are 2 distinct narratives around this, with Fallout 76 being like, oh, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it, you're just whining.
Yeah, Stockholm Syndrome, I think.
Whereas the general Fallout subreddit is like, yeah, this really sucks. They lied to us. They said they weren't going to do this. I don't care if it's a limited time. It's still doing it. Plus, the fact that they did it for a limited time thing once is a very strong indicator they'll probably do that again.
Or they have something else planned and they were testing the waters. And, yeah, they looked at the subreddit and it's like, oh, yeah, that... I mean, I'm just looking at some of this, and there's people here talking about the irrational fear of the Fallout event. It's just, I don't understand how people could rationalize being screwed over like this and being blatantly lied to. All right, if it's one thing that, if they had to pull a feature or something, that wasn't going to make the cut, or they toyed around with it and it didn't work out. That's one thing. But this is pretty blatant to me. This is just cut and dry. We're not making enough money on this. We're going to go back on this promise, and we're going to start selling power.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very shitty. I mean, just another reason for me to not get this game and play it. I mean, again, if it became free, I'd check it out just for, sort of pure curiosity.
I'm interested in what they did with the map, but that's it. I mean, let's put it this way. This isn't on the docket, but a few weeks ago, there was an event that bugged out and was teleporting people into one of the locked vaults that people think is going to be future DLC. Which, you want to bet that's going to be paid DLC now? Oh, yeah. Almost certainly. And there was people begging not to get banned for it. Because the big thing is that if they catch you in a place that you're supposed to be, suddenly your save file is corrupt. And, I mean, it's just, they're just such bullshit artists. It's just amazing that people are actually defending Bethesda in this. That's what really shocks me most about this. Not the fact that Bethesda lied, because, Bethesda... Bethesda lies so much that they should get into politics. They underdeliver so much they should be in politics. But
yeah, that checks out.
I mean, it makes me not want to touch another Bethesda product.
Yeah, I'm still... It gets harder and harder for me to be like, yeah, I mean, they suck, but I still want
here's the thing,
Elder
is that
Scrolls 6.
This isn't a problem unique to Fallout 76. Fallout 76 just magnifies all the problems that Bethesda has internally. Because they rationalize bugs that should be fixed, because it's kind of funny whenever this particular thing happens. Okay, maybe once in a while, but they do it over and over and over again. They break their own stuff over and over again. They expect the modders to fix their stuff so much that I think that they had some sort of autopilot on when they released Fallout 76 and expected the modders to fix the game. I really do. Because that's the only way I could explain the game launching in such a poor state that it's hard to even call it a AA title, let alone AAA. There's so many things in Bethesda's corporate culture that's Fallout 76 has shown a light on, that's been in place for years, that it's hard for me to really rationalize, be able to support them anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. That is totally fair. The thing that I typically go with, and I agree with what a lot of, pundits and things have said, is it's like, the stuff that makes Bethesda games enjoyable, despite all of those things being, their particular brand of storytelling and world building and stuff like that, is not present in Fallout 76, which, yes, it does magnify all the problems that they have. But being someone who's very much a story, gamer who likes the types of stories that Bethesda tells, while not perfect, like, in no sense of the word are perfect, but, that stuff is stuff that I'm still very much interested in.
Yeah, because I'm a gameplay guy, I absolutely hated Skyrim.
Yeah.
If I threw enough mods at it, I could probably get it to tolerable. But, there's only so many mods that the game could support until it just crashes because of a buffer overflow.
Right.
And mods can't fix everything.
No, but mods can fix lots of stuff.
Yeah, Bethesda's tried to show that one to be true, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Bethesda sucks.
Again. Hey, how about another company that sucks? Hey, you go for this one. Maybe we should have added a positive news topic on this.
It's fine. We talked about a lot of games that we enjoyed, so this is to counterbalance that.
Also, it's my fault. I talked about a game I loved, and suddenly all the news sucks.
Yeah, this week, I get to blame you. It's your fault. Usually it's my fault.
We could have added the Disney article.
Nah. So, Civilization 6 Steam end-user license agreement changes to allow for data collection. So anyways, with the most recent expansion, DLC, whatever, for Civ 6, they made some changes for the EULA, and it is running data collection in the background.
Again.
Again. Is this an opt-out system? Like you're opted in by default and they opt out? Or is
it's just on
all the time, period?
I think it's just on because I haven't seen anyone talk about a way to disable it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either, but I was just wondering if you knew before I was like, it runs all the time and you can't turn it off.
Yeah, I'm just double-checking to see if there's any info on that, but I'm not seeing anything. It's just, people are talking about a process running in the background.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to read the quote that's in the article. It says, the information we collect may include, so does include, personal information such as your first and or last name, email address, phone number, photo, mailing address, geolocation, payment information, reads the new EULA. In addition, we may collect your age, gender, date of birth, zip code, hardware configuration, console ID, software products played, survey data, purchases, IP address,
a small stool sample,
and the systems you have to play on. We may combine the information with your personal information and across other computers or devices that you may use. So, I mean, it's basically, hey, we're going to collect all of your data. Yeah, and this is
combined their new EULA with the Take-Two EULA. So, if you look at I just wanted to make that perfectly clear. If you look at the Civ 6 EULA, you won't see all of this, but you will see part of it, and then it's tied into Take-Two's. So, damn, right?
Yeah, some of this stuff is fairly common, like information about your hardware, your usage or play stats. Yeah,
but mailing addresses.
Yeah, even like IP addresses can be pretty common, things like that. But mailing address, photo. Photo is kind of vague. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean it's going to essentially do what your phone says, and it's like, oh, have access to the photos on your phone? Or is this like a camera type thing? Like, some of that definitely needs to be explained in more detail.
I can't do that. That would be too transparent.
So, I don't know why. I don't know for sure why. My theory is data collection to sell.
Yeah, well, that was my first one.
Another avenue to get your data. Say that again. Sorry.
It was either that or piracy for me. Them trying to collect information and compare it against their database of known sales.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I didn't think of that. I'm also always thinking data collection to either do, some sort of targeted advertising or figure out things like, optimal pricing or whatever it's called, where they try and figure out exactly how much you'll pay for something and then specifically market that to you, as opposed to just having blanket pricing for things.
There's some people that are saying that this was done months ago, but it's just now making the rounds, which I'm not 100% certain on when they changed the EULA. But the fact that this is a thing, right?
Yeah, it's very possible they could have changed it previously, and then just whenever you got the new DLC, it prompted you here's our new end user license agreement. And most people just skip through it because that's what most people do. Well, that's the thing. Those things.
Here's the thing: is that it's impossible to read all the EULAs. Think about it. Think about how many end user license agreement you've agreed to in the last year. How long would it take you to read that?
A long time.
It's actually
some of the shorter ones I've seen are probably in the 40 or 50 page range.
Yeah. It's just impossible to read all of this. So a lot of this is being parsed by computers to find this crap. There was I can't remember the study now, but it was determined that it was physically impossible to read all the EULAs that you're required to agree to completion, and this was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And they get longer and more all the time. As far as I know, they've never held up in court. And I know there have been several cases that have said you can't actually use a EULA to bind someone if they go to court. But I don't know if there have ever been some cases in other places other than the States whether a EULA has potentially been found binding or if that has changed.
Okay, according to...
So it's this
here's
weird...
one article that I just found on a quick search. Sorry to interrupt. You need 76 work days to read all the privacy policies each year. And that's just the privacy policies.
Yeah, that's too many.
And that's a work day, so, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It's just absurd, the amount of legal stuff that you have to jump through, and then they try to screw you over.
Yeah. The one thing that I like about mobile, whenever you're doing something on mobile, is the EULAs, while as long, they're still required to
too long didn't read as well.
Yeah, they have to. There's usually summaries in those such and such app wants to do this or that. Will you allow it? And then you can read through that and see what it's supposed to do, and either yes or no. And there have been many apps that nowhere it's mentioned anywhere that they're used for extensive monitoring. When you go to install it, it's like, this app wants access to your camera and pictures and microphone and files and, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, sweet baby Jesus, no. I don't want to try out this free game that much.
Well, to be fair, looking at the store page, I don't want to try out this free game that much.
Fair play.
I'm still sitting on like $25 or $26 worth of store credit, and I haven't found a damn thing I want to spend it on. It's sad that, just the state of the Play Store. So much junk.
Yeah, I think I've got $2 or something like that right now. But I mean, I'll get audiobooks and rent movies and stuff with all that free credit that I get. I very rarely actually spend it on a game or anything anymore.
But yeah, anything else to talk about here? Because, this is just... I can't believe they tried this again after Red Shell blew up on them. That's the thing. I mean, this was one of the companies that got hit hard by Red Shell. And, let's try to sneak it in again. Makes you wonder just why, right? Why do you want to know all this information?
Yeah. I mean, I think we probably have figured it out. I can't think of any other reason why they need that much information. So, I do want to say, like, I do want to say to the people in our community who regularly play Civ 6.
Well, I pasted this article in when I found it originally into the Discord.
Yeah, I remember that, and there wasn't really much said about it at the time, but that was, last week sometime? So, what do, guys? What'd it do? Does this bother you? Or do you not care? And either way, why? Why does it bother you? Why do you not care? I feel like the answer of, it bothers me seems more obvious, but, I might not be in the same wavelength. Maybe there's something else that it bothers you about it that I haven't thought of. And then especially if you're like, I don't care, whatever. Why is that? I would love to know that, because this bothers me. I probably won't, unless it changes, I probably won't play Civ 6, because I don't, I'm not naive. I know that there's tons of my data that I don't want out there, but I'm not just gonna easily hand it over to people who might not have it. So I'm just not gonna bother with it. But yeah, I think that
also
about wraps it up for us, right?
Also, I'm from the older school internet guys where we were told never use your real name online. They'll come and murder you.
Yeah.
And now it's just, everybody posts all of their information on Facebook.
Yep.
And also start bickering at one another because, it's Facebook. Yeah, I'm watching them bicker back and forth about the teacher strike. That's fun. I should make popcorn and just, watch the Twitter feed. Or just fire up Netflix and watch something good.
Yeah, that would probably be the better option. But yes, that does pretty much wrap us up for the week. We'll skip Discovery Queue. We didn't get anything for Community Corner, but we do need to call out the email and the Twitter. So why don't you go ahead and do that, Rach?
VGLpodcast@gmail.com or VGL Podcast on the Twitter. And we do have our Discord, which is on the website, vglpodcast.podbean.com.
Indeed. And also, just a reminder about our weekly community game night, which is on Monday nights, usually starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. At least it has so far every time. I post a little something on Discord on the day of about what game we're playing. It's just like a reminder. But almost certainly going to be DEF CON again this week. So, I mean, up to 6 people can play DEF CON in a game.
Yeah, but honestly, I would prefer to have at least one AI to beat up on.
Yeah, our plan was to team up against the AI, but, we'll see how many people show up, and we'll figure it out. So that's what the intent is for Monday, is to play DEF CON again. So, I guess that's everything, except for the part of the podcast where I go first. If you want to find my stuff on YouTube, you can do so by searching for Gaming Psychologist. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at JMA4707. I post all kinds of things on Twitter. Sometimes something funny, sometimes something political, sometimes stuff about tech, sometimes silly pictures or links to really interesting YouTube videos. Then I lost my stride. If you want to be friends directly with me on Steam, maybe ask me questions about games, do some trading, something like that, you can do so by sending a friend request to jarthur4707 on Steam. Enjoy chatting with people on there, but as part of our community focus going forward into the new year, also would love to chat with you guys on Discord, which we just said you can find at vglpodcast.podbean.com. That is, find the link to it. Or, if you don't want to do that for some reason, you could always just message one of us on Steam and be like, hey, can I please have just a direct link to Discord, which we can generate those for you. So no worries there either. What about you, buddy?
Well, first of all, the password for this week, because you kind of rambled there for a bit. The password for this week is Ichigo Ichie, which it's a 4-character idiom that translates into every meeting is an occasion that only happens once and should be treasured. I thought it would be something interesting for Yakuza.
That is very, very interesting. Very nice.
Something that should be treasured because it only happens once. Right?
Yeah. Oh.
I can hear that smile.
I am smiling. You know me.
Unfortunately. So for me, YouTube is stalled because I just had a bout of insomnia for the last several days, so my sleep cycle has been just wonked. And I've been too tired to really be able to focus, especially with what's going down in RimWorld, because shit is going down. So I wanted to record that when I was more awake, so I didn't want to risk it. So I decided to hold off on that, miss today, and restart again on Friday. I was originally planning on doing Sherlock Holmes as an additional series that just didn't want to record right. Everything just was so blocky whenever I was talking to someone. It was just horrendous looking. In every single setting, I couldn't find something that worked right. But yeah, YouTube should have more content on there by Friday, and who knows, maybe eventually I'll get reaccredited on Keymailer and I could start up the Sunday Sampler again and actually have something, somewhat regular. Or depending on how YouTube is going, maybe I'll just shut down the YouTube channel and fire Twitch again, because YouTube is doing stupid things again. Ugh. Yeah, I have a rant brewing on that one. You'll probably enjoy it, Jared.
Sweet.
But if you was to catch me ever on Twitch whenever I eventually have to jump ship, you could do so twitch.tv/caffeine_rage, or if you was to catch me on the Twitter, because I don't have exactly a set schedule because it's been several weeks since it's probably been about a month since I've done Twitch. You can find me Gaming with CR on the Twitter. I think my last big tweet was me tweeting Robin Williams photoshopped as the genie in the upcoming live-action Aladdin. It made me both happy and sad at the same time,
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a shame that, we lost Robin Williams. Can we have him back, please?
Yes. Yes, please.
And also, yes, please. Since we just did the email, we'll do it again just for old time's sake. VGLpodcast@gmail.com with your letters, voicemails, gaming-related topics, or just tweet them to us, VGL Podcast. Our lovely, lovely patrons have helped pay for this absolute madness, and you can find out more at patreon.com/VGL Podcast, which our patrons also pay for our website, VGLpodcast.podbean.com, which has the show notes, links to all our media, links to Discord, as well as, the RSS feed, because, that's kind of the thing for it. Or you can go to iTunes, Google Play, or where other good podcasts can be found, and you can find us there. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod, and you can find his work at Computech.com. And
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice. Bye-bye now.
see ya.